In 5 seconds. Hello and welcome to the Gooters podcast. B, we're without Daddy today.
I feel free, but also sad.
I do too.
It's kind of a
strange. I'm assuming this is what happens when Mike goes away for a long weekend and then comes back to a ton of work. Seemed pretty stressed out, and so it's just the two of us today, and I appreciate you being here. We've had our fantasy drama this week, but we're still friends.
Tradegate.
It is Tradegate. No one in the league or no one in the chat room except for Fredo knows what's going on, but we get it. Becca, where's Big Papa? What do we say? He is working? We don't know.
He's working on his secondary job right now.
Yeah. Let's just say that his lack of commitment has not gone unnoticed. So B, how are you today?
I've definitely been better. It was pretty rough weekend for me, sports-wise, all around, with the Broncos debacle and then yesterday's debacle. So I don't know. I'm feeling kind of like I'm in this weird liminal, almost like apathetic space when it's coming to sports right now, and that's a terrifying place to be because I know that it's just like me trying to bring that hot iron anger into cold iron steeliness, but I'm not feeling super positive right now.
Yeah, I'm not either, but we got to get through for the fans, right? We're here for the Mike Hernandez, Becca, Thunder Road. Yeah, we are doing this for you. So, big match away at Old Trafford. I didn't give us a snowball's chance in hell, just based off of how the matches have gone this season, our form, how shitty we've played away from home against the top six. The lineup came out, and outside of the defenders we're desperate to see, I thought it was fairly strong. My biggest concern when seeing the lineup was, why is Xhaka playing deeper than Torreira once again?
Why do we play 3 DMs in the realistically best opportunity that we are going to have this year to go to another top 6 side away and play them when they're reeling? Yeah. We're not going to have that. And we're playing. I mean, I guess that kind of gets into it right away, but kind of, I don't know. It's a weird space to be in because after Forest, I think, I don't know, you and I talked about this a lot, but I was pretty positive as kind of seeing that as a potential turning point for us and kind of seeing a little bit more attacking football and a little bit more kind of like a free-flowing mentality. And it's not like we don't have the players to do it, but it's this kind of concerted effort from Emery. At this point, it almost seems like he's like trolling us or it's intentional, but just being stubborn and playing players out of position. And it's wearing on everybody.
It's weird you say that because it is almost like we are being trolled. But that being said, are we wrong to think that Torreira played deep last season? Like I'm thinking back, and it's like I almost feel like he was always kind of in that 20-yard pocket right in front of the front 5 or 4, and just kind of being that distributor, clean up, kind of nip the heels of whoever got the ball and was running in that direction.
I think that's like the big difference because like last year we did see him kind of making those late runs into the box, and like he was pretty successful in doing that and kind of either winning fouls or just kind of like making things happen. And I think unfortunately Emery saw that and decided, like he's going to play our pseudo 8-10 Ramsey role, which makes absolutely no sense. I mean, if you look at the heat maps from yesterday, he was playing so far up the pitch and so far wide, and it makes no sense. That's not his role. And we talked about this kind of on the last couple of pods, but it's the role of a manager to empower their players to be successful. And we're kind of seeing consistently Emery is more worried about, for some reason, fitting Xhaka into a role that he's not kind of put into a position to succeed in, rather than playing players that we know that we have to actually play in a tactical way that is going to make the fans happy, but also going to create way more chances and kind of cover the holes that we have in our defense, because playing Xhaka that deep kind of exposes the back 4 in a way that wouldn't be the case if Torreira was playing there. So I just feel confused. I think that's the best. I just don't get what's going on after having.
I'm the same. And as Fredo points out, the thing I don't get is getting Xhaka, Torreira, and Guendouzi, no creative force to drive the team forward, set things to defend, and we didn't do that anyway, right? Guendouzi, I see out of the three, probably the most accustomed to actually turning the ball and driving forward. But when you have Danny Ceballos on the bench, he seems that...
And Willock.
And Willock. You had mentioned Ramsey. I think Ceballos is probably the biggest character that could step into that Ramsey role, right? But like you said, we're playing players out of position, and tactically it just doesn't make sense. And we could beat this horse dead, which we have, but Lee Dixon said before the game even started on the pre-match warm-up, we will win this match if Torreira sits in front of those 4 defenders and just plays cleanup. He doesn't have to move more than 20 yards, he said, and we will win the match. And we didn't see that. And not to say Torreira can't distribute and can't make things happen going forward, because we've seen a few times he can do that. He's just not naturally that's not his game. B, one thing that did happen before the game I want to talk about was Ozil. And not the fact that he was left out of the squad. It was really the pre-match conversation that Emery had with, I'm assuming, Sky Sports, when he was asked, was Ozil left out based off of tactic or illness? And he said, nope, for today, this is my starting 11 and my squad. I went and looked because I was curious. His wage packet compared to Liverpool and City, the only player who matches him on wages is Kevin De Bruyne. Both squads, the next highest paid player is $275. Like, that to me is absolutely absurd. And the fact that, you got all of those players who would walk into Arsenal's squad below him, we can't somehow integrate him into the team. So the question for you is it Unai's problem?
Can you hear the puppy in the background?
Oh, I can totally, yeah.
I am so sorry, guys. I was gone this past weekend, all weekend, because I played tennis in college, so we had our alumni weekend, and she's just like full on give me all the attention all the time, trying to hide the mic. I'm so sorry.
So let me ask you the question. You're either pro Ozil or pro Unai in this scenario.
Yeah.
Where do you fit? Like, why do you not see him be included in at least the matchday squad away to United?
It kind of gets to this thing where everything that's happening now kind of feels like, it almost feels like we're in some sort of alternate reality, because like from a logical standpoint, it's pretty clear that we lack creativity in the final third. And who is our most creative player theoretically? Mesut Ozil. But he's consistently being left home. And at this point, I kind of have to think like there's something going on behind the scenes that is kind of like precluding his inclusion. And I don't know if it's on like a relationship level with Unai, but in this situation, from the outside looking in, you have to ask why he's not at least on the bench. Mm-hmm. Like, if he's the type of player that can come in and make a really kind of immediate and tangible impact for us. And we were missing that kind of impact again, especially after we kind of, things opened up. We'll get to that later, but it really is kind of getting to the point where it almost feels like you have to start wondering if Unai is the person to take us forward, because he's just being so stubborn about the things that seem so clearly obvious to anybody who is watching from the outside and like cares about what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so bizarre. It is such a bizarre scenario. And I feel like you almost have to side with the management on this, not necessarily Unai, but there are more players than just him at the table. So like any, team, I'm assuming the coaches sit down before a big match and they kind of plan out the tactics and who's going to play where and why and what's going to happen if you go 1-0 down within 15 minutes. And then that gets relayed to the team. And so it's not just Unai who sits, and I know he's the placeholder, right? So he's always going to get the stick, but it's almost as if we need to hear
other perspectives.
We need to hear from the club, like, what's going on here? I think they owe that to the supporters to say, okay, if Unai says, hey, he had a head cold. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a big difference then. It's raining. It's Old Trafford. It's important. He can't play because we're talking about a World Cup winner, right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the things that's becoming increasingly frustrating for everybody from this outside perspective is, I don't know, there's been this growing disconnect between the general communication and having like a lack of transparency in the way that we're actually kind of like given any insight to what's happening and the decisions that are being made. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like
your dog's really upset that
I know. She just is so talky. Hold on. I'm gonna give your thoughts on this. I'm gonna give her something to do real quick.
Sure. As Fredo said, at this point, I'm fine with not playing Ozil. That bed's been made. The ship has sailed. But put a creative midfielder in there. Ceballos, Willock, Smith Rowe, and I completely agree. If we're not going to be utilizing Ozil in the sense that we should be, I think Saka's probably that creative player. But is he playing in the right position? Who knows? I know with a lot of young players, you ship them out and put them on the left wing. That way they can get game time, and it's a little less hazardous than playing down the middle. However, to me, when you're paying a player as much as you're paying and you know what he can bring to the squad, you almost have to take him in the match day squad, even if you're not playing the individual. But then that leads me to the question of, is Ozil going to be a little bitch if he travels with the squad and he's not utilized? So it's just a very, very strange scenario. And I'm with Becca. I'm over it. I'm totally over it. And, Thunder Road, to some people, dogs are babies, and that is Bees. That is Bees' baby.
Yeah, that's basically the situation right now. She's wildly spoiled. Yeah, that's really on point. Becca says belly rubs or get the fuck out.
So finish your point on Ozil.
Me?
Yeah.
I think I guess I feel like it's kind of like indicative of this growing communication and transparency disconnect. And that's something that we've kind of seen throughout the last couple of years in general decision making, and particularly recently we started to feel like the tide was changing a little bit there, and that we were kind of starting to, I guess, like the upper management was starting to understand, like, we care about these things a lot, and they wanted to show that they also cared about them. And the way to do that is to communicate with us about what's going on. And there's so much this takes up so much of the Arsenal story or general narrative's headspace right now during this season. For somebody who's not stepping on the pitch, the amount of just general stress and time, like, I can't even imagine how this weighs on the actual players themselves, because clearly they still value what he brings to the team because they voted him one of the 5 captains. Mm-hmm. And if Unai is going to be like, all right, we're going to essentially excommunicate you from the side, just do it. Like, that's not what I want to happen, but like, be definitive, make a decision. And like, it's this kind of like waffling, basically, like this weird lack of like real kind of, I don't know, like confident decision-making from Unai that we see also reflected on the pitch.
Yeah. And dude's in prime time.
Should be in the prime, in the prime of his career.
No, he is. And if we're going to pay him all this money, why not pay him and loan him out? That way there's not this debate. That way there's not this question. And we don't have to deal with it. It doesn't have to be a storyline. We can focus on other things. And there can't...
It's a distraction.
Yeah, it is. And you can't tell me this doesn't bleed into the locker room. You can't tell me that leaving him out of a trip to Old Trafford doesn't make Aubameyang turn to someone else in the squad and go, what the fuck's going on? When you have a player that creative and has that ability to make things happen so quickly, like I said before, put him on the bench, don't play him, whatever. At least take him along. Don't give us that quick off the cusp. Yeah, this is my 11 today. This is my squad. It just, for me, it doesn't bode well or sit well. I want to hear specific.
Yeah, and I mean, he ended up reiterating almost like verbatim the same thing after the match, and like, we at least deserve to know what's going on at this point. Like, if you're gonna leave him home, there has to be a reason, and like, even make up a reason. I mean, we've heard how much time like he's missed because he has a cold, or like there's this little something or other that seems like there's no way that's actually what's keeping him out. But like, they're not even trying at this point to like spin it. They're just like, he's out of the squad and we're going to pretend like it's not happening. I just don't, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. And I guess that's like, you kind of see that reflected, like I was kind of saying earlier, like you see it reflected on the pitch in such a way that like, there's just this lack of definitive decision-making I don't know if it's kind of holistically in like the coaching system or if it's just Unai, and it kind of seems like it's just Unai. But I mean, thinking about the actual match itself yesterday, how many corners did we end up giving up? Or I mean, how many like clean counters did we end up giving up off of our own corners? Like multiple times in the same way over and over. And there was no, like, how can that not be something that's like seen, addressed, and you move on? Like it happens once, it's not good. But like 3 times, 4 times, leading to basically every big chance that they had. Like, where is the definitive action? Like, where is that like decisive decision being made by somebody who is in power and has like it? I don't know.
Last week we played with Pepe as our last man back, like off of corners, and to me, you know, he's an attacking player who can shoot the ball on net, so he should really be up and around the box. So you almost want to put Torreira in, who's shorter than shit, so he wouldn't be defending anyone, right? Plus he's defensive minded, and then you have your 2 wingbacks slotted. Yeah. And that's typically like your 3 that stand on the halfway line. And then if a counter does happen, you have 3 defensive-minded players who then quickly communicate to each other, how do we break this up? Coupled with everyone sprinting back. And I think there was a moment in yesterday's match where one of those corner kicks essentially turned into a counterattack, and Aubameyang was one of the players who was sprinting 70 yards to get back. And it's like, well, why should he be having to do that? I appreciate him doing it, but he should be the one that during that moment is running to the center circle thinking, okay, if we counter, I'm in the right position. So it throws the entire squad out of unison, because now we're having our attacking players come back to defend. When we receive the ball, we have nowhere to go. So we're stuck in our own half.
Yeah.
So it's just very bizarre. Let's jump to the first half. It was raining. It was windy. Both Luiz and Guendouzi looked like they slopped up on Solgo pre-match. I don't know if you've seen Coming to America. I mean,
of course, come on.
You know, not great hair days for them, nor was the football. Lots of people thought we looked decent in the first half. I must be partially blind because I thought we were awful. When you go away to United, which is a tough opposition, but their team isn't playing great, the first 20 minutes, you should be saying to the team, possession, maintain and keep the ball, pepper it in on goal, similar to what we did at
start the second half.
Yeah. Start the second half, right? But I thought the first half we were awful.
I think it's almost hard to analyze this game in any objective way because both teams were just so bad. Like before last week, we were joking about how like we were branding this as El Sacico, and then I was tweeting yesterday like I want to rebrand it to El Trashico because it was just the worst football that I've seen. And especially in the first, I mean, think about the first 20 minutes. It was just like, it's actually like anarchy. Like it felt like a weird Sunday league game to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like a huge opportunity. I mean, talking in the language of Unai too, like we had a big opportunity there to really kind of assert our place as like the team that's going to make that jump into the top 4. That was kind of floundering last year. And even like kind of on a more micro level in the game itself, like there were such obvious tactical changes that could have been made. And it was like, I don't know, like there was just like a lack of actually incorporating what was going on, especially from an environmental perspective, because we were playing like it wasn't wet and it just wasn't working. And there was no changes being made.
My coworker who just loves football, doesn't really support a team, walked in this morning. He's like, hey, I finally watched that game. Holy shit, that was awful. You know, and this is a fan who's a neutral just watching. And he's like, and he summed it up perfectly. It was just like waiting for the first team to make a mistake. And that's essentially what was happening. And, you know, as you had said, and I just said before, we didn't start the match prepared for the conditions, or we didn't start the match prepared to dominate a team that looks awful. I mean, if you're a good motivator, And you think a coach is like, imagine Phil Jackson, his warm-up speech would be go for blood. Jose Mourinho would do the same thing. Pep Guardiola, they're a dog that's down. You got to knock them while they're down. And we didn't do that. We showed them too much respect. And it's not like United overplayed us or outplayed us. We just sat back and we allowed them to play us. It's like we didn't even try and dominate.
Yeah, I mean, we were playing to not lose, and it felt like we were set up to not lose, and you're obviously not going to ever win, or like.
Which I'm okay with in the last 15 minutes of a game, not the first 15.
But look at to start the second. Okay, so I guess that's like making a little jump, but like to start the second half, that first kind of little phase of the second half where things kind of start feeling a little more structured, and you're like, okay, I can see what we're doing now. Like it was the first time it didn't feel like absolute anarchy out there, and you start feeling like a little bit encouraged, and there's still kind of the, I don't know, like mental shutdowns where that like lead to unnecessary chances, but there's something building there, and it kind of felt like, oh, because we're now down 0-1, the way that we have to play to not win the game or to play not lose the game is to get a goal back so we can draw, basically. And like that led to like an opening up tactically. And then this kind of gets into to kind of more detailed sub issues that we seem to have. But like bringing Ceballos on there is great because it opens it up. We get the goal, but then that translates into there being way bigger holes. And then we just fall back because we're trying to play defensive again when we now have an offensively oriented lineup in the game, into just absolute nonsense. Like it's just, it's so confusing from, as somebody who's like so emotionally tied up in these matches too, it's just like hard to watch, and it becomes like so much more frustrating because of it, because it's like, it's so obvious that there are things that need to be changed, or that the things that we're doing are not working for like very kind of basic and easily understandable reasons. Like if you bring in somebody who's going to open up the midfield and kind of make things more offensive, if you try to play defensively, then you're going to be exposed defensively. Yeah. And that's like what ended up happening in the second half after that like lovely kind of like 15-minute period where we actually looked like we knew what we were doing. Or I guess like not even that we knew what we were doing, but like we're set up in a way that was like how the play, like there's an alignment between the tactics and like what we were actually seeing on the pitch.
Yeah. And that's another thing to me. Like we keep hearing that Unai's like this tactical genius and he can morph and change. And we saw it a lot last year with that 20 match unbeaten run where we would go into a game and everyone would be going, why the hell is he playing 3 at the back? And then 20 minutes into the game, you're like, oh, I see why he's playing 3 at the back. And this year we keep talking about identity, and I hate that because I think that your identity does shift, right? From match to match.
It needs to, or it should.
Yeah. But if you were to look at the top 4 teams of last year, they would go into a game against a weaker opponent, and the first thing they would think is we attack, we possess. And even if you're City and you go down, even when they were down 2-0 to Norwich City, the same thing. It's like we're going to build out of the back. We're going to keep possession. We're going to keep playing the way we play because they just had the belief that they would catch up. Now they didn't. But when you go to a United, set that precedent the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And as Fredo said, it's not just you, dude. The first half was fearful and timid. That's how we started. And that's how the rest of the game went. And there was this little piece in the beginning of the second where, as you said, we looked decent. But Jesus Christ, I mean, we've seen it too often now, where it doesn't matter if it's United or if it's Watford. We are just not good.
I've heard, I don't know. So that's something that I've actually kind of taken issue with in the 24-hour narrative post-match, is that we're actually just not that good.
Yeah.
And I think that's a question that should be asked, but I think that we've seen that we have the pieces to do something that's much better than what we're doing right now, or like to look a lot better than we're looking right now, if they're played in positions that are like actually kind of tactically built around their strengths, and we're kind of like square peg, round hole all over the pitch.
Totally.
And when you're doing that, it's not going to work out well. And I think I don't know, I kind of felt like watching the game, you kind of started to see a growing frustration in the players for kind of the first time that we've seen. And in the first half, there was just like looking at Guendouzi just getting back and like yelling at people constantly and throwing his hands up. And I don't know, I guess we could talk about like the whole Pepe saga that's kind of developing right now too. But if you're kind of constantly be putting in positions to fail by your manager, you're going to start being frustrated with that manager because you're not going to play well. And then that's going to hurt your confidence. And then that's going to hurt your kind of like longevity moving forward, you know? And
totally.
I think that's the point that I don't know, this is the most, I hate like the idea of like Emery out, Emery in. And that's like such like a kind of unfair, polarizing way of like characterizing how somebody should be thinking about like a managerial decision. But like, I think we're getting to the point where you have to start looking towards the future and asking like, is what we've seen on the pitch in the Premier League specifically? And this also kind of keeps giving a little more credence to that theory that against Forest, Freddie had a lot more input into how we kind of played and set up, which is really interesting.
Well, you had mentioned Pepe there, and then you had said something along the lines of, you know, square peg, round hole, not allowing players to essentially flourish, right? Yeah. So look at these two players, right? So Xhaka and Pepe. Xhaka is being played out of position. We know that. He's better when he's got someone behind him who's that defensive mind where he can just be the pivot, and he's not relied upon to actually go out and be that defensive midfielder. So
and he's good in that role too. Like,
exactly. So he's the square hole with the round peg. Pepe, for me, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, because it's the big debate, has put himself into a lot of good positions to score goals. Right now, there seems to be a confidence issue with him. I don't personally think he's an 80 million pound player based off what I've seen, and I'm happy to be taught otherwise. I think that we need to give him time to slowly embed into the club. I'm not going to say he's a Thierry Henry type of player, but it took dude 15 matches, I think, 11 matches before his first goal, even a little bit more after that, and then the floodgates open. So you got to give a player time. He's learning a new language, new city, like everything. That all takes into account new teammates, new system. I get that. So I look at Xhaka and I go, unfortunately for dude, he's just in a shitty situation where he's setting up to fail, and that sucks because he's the scapegoat for the team. It seems like he's got a big enough head on his shoulders to deal with that. Pepe, I look at him and I go, okay, you're playing in your prime position. You're putting yourself into good positions. Yesterday, he could have banged 2 on goal. De Gea literally had to pick up a rolling ball. Where are you on the Pepe train right now?
I personally am I'm driving the Pepe bandwagon still, like moving forward. Because I watched him a lot last year, and he's one of the most electric players I've seen in recent memory. And I think this kind of gets back to the square peg round hole issue tactically, because yeah, he's playing in his natural kind of like right wing position, you know. But the way that we're actually setting up is just isolating him out there. And think about when he's on the ball, like how few options he has, especially yesterday when it's just like coming down, you know. It's really hard to be taking people on one-on-one with balls skipping everywhere and touches kind of like a little erratic because of that. And we didn't set up at all to kind of like help him, and we haven't been setting up at all to help him. And I don't know, when he's at his best, he's running downhill, you know. And it's like, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I don't know
sorry.
why that happened. I don't know why your avatar. Why did your avatar?
I have no idea.
Show up on.
You're stealing my identity. Maybe you could give it to this team.
Dude, I'm thinking about adding Mike's avatar to my. That's the funniest thing to me still.
The one that's like unfinished, the illustration. You just
gotta leave it at that.
we can tease that. We'll share that with the world at some point soon. But I guess with Pepe, it's so frustrating because there's so much talent there, you know, and we're just not maximizing. I mean, like, you got to recognize as a manager when somebody is making as big of a transition as he is being kind of like thrown into right now, especially with all the pressure that comes to moving to kind of like one of the world's biggest clubs with their biggest ever price tag. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to deal with. And it's your job as a manager to help them deal with it as well as they can, like to make things easier. You're kind of just like, you're supposed to be enabling people to do well. And I feel like everything that is happening, especially when it comes to Pepe, in terms of our tactical setup, is isolating him and making it harder. And you can see his frustration in the Premier League has grown game to game, and he looks uncomfortable. Like what we want to see is him feeling like when he's flowing, he looks like he's having so much fun, but there's like that intensity about him, and it's like that confidence, and it's like it's just like fluid. Like flowing is the best way to describe it. It's like intense, just like electric forward play. And when he's not enabled, like we're putting him in a position where his responsibility is basically like get the ball with his back to goal on the wing, and then try and either like dribble out one-on-one away from somebody and then make something happen, or like get pushed out wide and hit crosses. And that's not what his game is at all. He's an inside forward. He's not a winger, you know. He needs to be cutting in onto his left foot, skipping balls through either front post to Aubameyang, or like those little he hits these passes that are kind of these inside foot curling into the back post. Like, he's unreal when he's running downhill. Yeah. And he's exactly what we've been kind of like clamoring for the last few years as a winger. So, I mean, since Alexi, like people who have watched him in France, like he reminds you of prime Alexi, and that like he's getting downhill and he's making things happen, whether it's like assisting or it's finishing himself.
Yeah.
And he's just not been empowered to do that at all this year.
Right.
So obviously he's not going to succeed.
And I think we just need to give him time. You know, in hindsight, the deal, I think we paid $20 million this year, kind of the Dortmund package where they'll pay high, and then if they sell, you know, they're not, you know, you don't have to recoup all of the funds, because you could sell him for 60 in the summer and you've made 40 million. So, you know, I'm not saying that that's what we're going to do, but we do have an opportunity there to close the door if we need to, but way too early. Let's go to their goal B. Lots of people are blaming Xhaka for ducking. Listen, I said
on Twitter all day yesterday about this.
Here's my thing. Everyone knows I love Xhaka, but I've also been saying that dude needs to sit on the pine for a while. To simply blame a player for ducking off of a deflected ball, if you watch the replay from behind the goal, you are seeing him kind of track the original flight of the ball, and then he like flicks his head, which in my mind is him trying to flick the ball away. Yeah. You're also taught at a very young age, when you're in or around the 18, you don't want to redirect that ball and the other way for your keeper. So
you're only
who knows if Leno had called him off? I don't know. I just don't think we can blame him. I think if Guendouzi was in that position, no one would be placing blame, but I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean,
yeah, this was something. So I have like I don't know. I tweeted about this afterwards, because like the angles that were kind of broadcast were they didn't broadcast the angle that was like the kind of critical behind McTominay shooting angle until like very late. So on the side angles, it looks like he's like ducking the ball. And that's, I mean, considering like how much kind of general vitriol there is towards Xhaka, obviously that's going to cause like a lot of anger in the fan base and a lot of like reaction generally. But after having seen, like, I mean, everybody eventually did see the secondary replay. And after having seen that, like, if you're not like the ball got deflected and he's looking, I mean, you can look at the actual, like with the Guendouzi head over, which everybody was like praising him for, and rightly so. That's what Xhaka was looking to do. Like, it's literally that exact same, like as a defender, if there's a ball coming in, like you don't want to be redirecting it down. So your head's going to go down so you can flick the ball up and over the goal. You're not trying to have it deflect anywhere that's going to change an angle for your keeper. And I don't know, he's just like scapegoat is the perfect way to describe. I think there was a lot of shortcomings with Xhaka's performance yesterday too, and not just like a general frustration with his recent performances, but I think that, I don't know, it's like we're starting to get into this weird, divisive, kind of reactionary, scary Arsenal fan base thing where it's just like Gooners versus Gooners, and everybody has like a sect that they kind of will die on the hill for no matter what. And Xhaka's now becoming like one of those people that's like, you either hate him or you're like, even though I can objectively recognize that he's doing poorly, really poorly, it shouldn't be a decide, I'm going to like die on this hill in defending him. And it's kind of, I mean, it reminds me obviously of like the Wenger in, Wenger out kind of like this just like weird dichotomy in this, like this, I feel like sometimes as a fan base, we kind of like enjoy the conflict that we try to sow. And when things, I mean, I think the biggest thing, like I was thinking about this morning, because I've been trying so hard to be positive about like where we're at and kind of like find positives to take. And if we were to win this weekend, we would be potentially heading into the second international break in third, you know?
Yep.
And if you were to tell me at the beginning of the year, if we're missing 3 of our back 4 and they're coming back, all supposedly going to be healthy post international break, and we're potentially going to be sitting in third, I would have been like, sign me up for that immediately.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it's tough because like, it's hard to keep that perspective because the product on the pitch just seems so poor, but like we're in 4th right now.
We're in 4th considering we've dropped points against.
We should be in 3rd.
No, we should. So the goal is a great shot, and it's unfortunate that Xhaka can't get it, but it does take a deflection. And I think one of the angles immediately shows Socrates on the ground, you know, looking like that's on me as well. Yeah. And as you said, we live in a world right now where the narrative has to be, who do we blame? Xhaka always seems to be in and around that. I like to play a game with myself. If you go on Instagram, I like to click on the comments when Xhaka posts something to see, you know, if there's a negative comment in the first 10 comments, and there always is. Someone with "good on my club" or whatever.
Disabling. That's how like vitriolic things have gotten. Is like he's very frequently disabling the comments on his Instagram, and that's not a position. I mean, like there's. This is why I get frustrated a lot with like the way that we react to athletes and their performances on the pitch in this particular case, in that like he's not happy with how he's playing right now. And I'm sure he's not happy with how he's being implemented tactically, but he can't be like, I mean, like as a player, you want to be on the pitch. And if the way for him to be on the pitch is to play in this way that's completely antithetical to his strengths, he's going to do that because he wants to be on the pitch. And he's not going to be like, I'm not going to do this thing. And it's kind of funny too, because you like think about the Forest game and like the Chambers comment where he, like Unai after the game was talking about how Chambers just ignored him and like went forward when he was supposed to stay back and provide cover. And I was just like kind of chuckling when I read that, and kind of thinking about it through the lens of this game too, is like it almost kind of felt like when we were playing well, the players were like, fuck this, we're going to play, we're going to get forward, we're going to get a goal. And then there was that, I mean, like that, however 15-minute long thing that led to almost the second goal with the Saka touch. And it's just like, if your manager is holding your players back from performing, and like there's this kind of like growing sense of restriction, that's just like you have to listen for the sake of listening because like you want to play, that's really big problem. Like that's a huge red flag. And I think that like I think the biggest reason that I'm kind of as frustrated with Unai as I am is that like there's just this stubborn insistence, and because of that, I don't see any way forward that's like positive for the future. You know, like I don't see where this is going. Not even from an identity standpoint, but like
no, it's tough because, as you had said, like there needs to be. You know, you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, right? There was a fear that the players had in the manager, but then they also understood what he was putting in place and how he was designing the structure of what they needed to do on the pitch. And there are moments in a match where, and I think this is a lot of what Ozil's problem is he's told you have to do this. And when this happens, you do this. And this happens, you have to go. Some players can't do that. creativity is just let me be free and I'll go. Like you couldn't do that with a Bergkamp. That's just not the way you would utilize him. Whereas with like a Pepe, for example, it's you're on the right wing, you're going to cut in on your left, you're going to take a shot at goal, right? We see him doing the same things. There's no fear with him. I think these players, as you said, they know they're going to walk into the locker room. He's not going to be up their ass. And every once in a while, there'll be a moment in the game where a player does something out of the norm, and you can read the pitch and go, okay, good that you did that. You were on your toes and you thought about it and you went, right? As you just said, like Chambers knew specifically what was supposed to be happening and was just like, fuck it, you know?
And that was the most successful we've looked all year.
Totally. And you know what worries me about that? What happens when Bellerin goes into that position? Is he gonna say the same thing to Bellerin?
I think that I don't know. I guess like as a player, they're obviously so kind of like obviously different at an inherent level and what they're bringing like strengths wise. But I mean, we also have to remember with Chambers, like he's playing out of position, so he's just like out there having fun. Like he's just looking, just like doing his thing. And like when Bellerin comes back, and I think this is the thing that's going to be kind of revolutionary for us. And I've kind of been hammering this home for the last like month, but having Bellerin and Tierney, two players who are natural in their outside back positions and like kind of possess that general positional awareness that's so important there, because there is so much dynamic up and down play, and you have to like understand when it's okay to make that run forward and when you have to stay back, depending on how the actual formation of the pitch is moving, you know? And like that's something that's kind of separates great outside backs from good outside backs, or ones that like seem like they're kind of liability. I mean, look at Seo. Like he's pretty good going forward and shows flashes of being good going forward, but he's also just a huge liability defensively because he's a wing back. He's not a left back. And having people who are like able to kind of bring that inherent positional awareness is going to be so great for us, because we're going to actually be able to keep the shape that you want playing a back four. But at the same time, if you have players who have that positional awareness, or like have like with Pepe, like everybody's been talking about how bad his right foot is generally. And that's because we keep putting him in situations where the only thing that he's able to do is get shown onto his right foot and get stuck basically in isolation, and either have to make some sort of brilliant take on happen, which we've seen him do multiple times, or he's just going to end up looking bad, which we've also seen happen a couple of times. That's like, just, this has been, I don't know, the general thought that I've had a really hard time with. And I think that it's kind of the foundation of what's swaying my thought that Unai might not really be the way for us forward. But like, the worst thing that you can have in like an employment situation is the kind of like the acting in such a way that the people under you end up feeling apathetic and start feeling like, and that breeds frustration. And then like, you just get this kind of situation where nobody wants to play or work for this person, because it's just like, you are making my life miserable. And it's like starting to feel like that's actually what's happening here. And
the Jose Mourinho effect.
Yeah, I mean, like the late Jose Mourinho effect. I think that, I mean, like, and this kind of gets to like when you were talking earlier about like having this kind of like inherent ability to like kind of instill fear in your players, or like instill like a sense of respect. And like when you don't have that, you're like, even if you're trying to set up a particular way, like it's not going to be as effective, because you have I mean, like the term in like American football or American sports is like lost the locker room.
Yeah.
So you're losing the dressing room. That's it. Like there's no coming back from that. And I feel like we're now approaching that like kind of like inflection point of no return, where it's like, how are you going to move forward when your players don't trust you?
Did you send that text right now that you're the employment expert, or is Mike in the chat room?
Mike must be in the chat room.
So he can be in the chat room, but he can't be on the pod.
Questioning your seriousness, Mike.
Strike three, Mike. This is strike three. Now, let's go to the Aubameyang goal. How in the fuck the referee missed should be researched, in my opinion, because This had literally happened 5 feet in front of him.
That just blew my mind in real time. Because, like, in real time, I was like, there's no way he's off. Like, you can see him hesitant. He was off all day yesterday. But, like, that was, like, you could kind of see that building and him thinking, like, I'm going to elongate my runs. Like, as I played striker growing up and like that. Like, they were playing kind of like a weird staggered line. And, like, you can really kind of, like, elongate and bend your run around that. And you could see him doing that in real time. And I'm like, he's on by forever. Like, I was so angry about it.
It's frustrating. And with all that being said, there's talk that Young and De Gea shut off. And they're stupid too. You learn from the youngest age you play to the whistle. These players have been taught, especially with VAR, you continue to play and we'll figure it out after. I don't think De Gea really shut off. He still came off of his line. Maybe he would have been a little
bit did either.
Yeah, no. But Fredo asks, it's a good question. Is Aubameyang more important to this team, or was Henry more important to the team in 2012?
I think it was I don't know if it was Twitter or actually in one of the group chats that we're in, but there's kind of like a ridiculous stat about total goal contributions and like percentage of like a team's total goals. And I mean, if you just look exclusively, not even in all competitions, but at the Premier League this year, Aubameyang has been directly responsible for every single one of our points. Like, without him, we have 0 points. And I mean, like, obviously that's like a little bit of a mischaracterization, because if he's not the one playing striker, somebody's going to be grabbing goals theoretically, I guess. But like, I've never, at least in recent memory, it hasn't felt like a player, like, without him, everything would fall apart. I can't even imagine where we would be without him. But I think that, like, one, it's crazy to think about, like, he is now technically getting old. And, like, people talk about, like, that 30 threshold and that being, like, the heavy decline. But you look at players like Alba right now and, like, Vardy, you know, who are kind of these, I don't know, started as, I mean, Vardy's, like, obviously, like, way more counterattack oriented, but, like, are these style of strikers that seem like they're kind of, like, gaining momentum as they're getting older, because they're now, like, feeling the pitch better and making more kind of concerted runs. And I think without him, I don't know. I don't want to compare anybody to Thierry. Like, I feel like that's like I
don't think the comparison is who is the better player. It's who is more reliant on. And I think you've answered that.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. This year, just the pure statistics of it, Aubameyang has essentially been involved in literally everything. B, we've got a few minutes left. Tell me your man of the match.
This one's actually really tough, because I feel like I feel like the person who really kind of provided the most outside of like the direct goal contribution on ball was Saka. And I was just like, I was blown away again by his performance. He is absolutely fearless coming in. It kind of harkens back to when we had Stuart McFarlane on, and he was talking about like this kind of swagger. That's not his word. That's my rephrasing. But this kind of like inherent drive or confidence that like some young players have. And he was talking about Cesc having it and about Joe Willock having it. And you see that Guendouzi having it. And Saka has that, like, I don't know, there's a term that I really like in general sports, like he has the juice. Like he has that like inherent something that is completely indescribable, but it separates him in like a competitive situation from everybody. And you see him on the ball and he's like, he has all the technical ability to put things together, but he also has that inherent drive that's just amazing to watch. And he just turned 18.
Right.
Like that is absurd. So I think
you're going with Saka?
After going on that whole rant, I actually think that the man of the match was Guendouzi yet again, because without him yesterday, there was just so many times that he was the one back making a play, making a key interception, hyping everybody up, showing like, not in the hashtag passion with SHUN, but like showing that kind of like intrinsic leadership quality that we've seemed to have lacked a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we saw it from him. We saw it from Aubameyang. We saw Saka kind of getting after the refs, but also after a couple players, which I thought was really interesting. And I think like there is this, I think that tension that seems to be growing in the locker room can be translated into positive kind of like, it can be positively manifested on the pitch, or it can like lead to internalized just like frustration. And I think we've seen the three of them in particular turn that into productivity on the pitch.
Yeah.
And watching Guendouzi, I don't know, like I love the kid. Like without him, we would be in big, big trouble this year.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to go with Leno on the day. I just
we haven't talked about him at all.
Yeah, no, he made that Harry Maguire save, and then the free kick save that came. I forget who shot it, but had the strength to just palm it away and then get up and continue to play with it. So he yesterday was my man of the match because he kept us in the match. Defensively, I thought we looked awesome. I was
impressed with David Luiz yesterday. Yeah. And also in distribution, like he was looking downfield so much, and we kind of see that. I'm so excited for him and him and Aubameyang to get on the same page, because when they do, that's going to be terrifying.
Yeah, no, and even Papa looked good yesterday too.
Yeah,
I thought they all did. So, but my man of the match is going to go to Leno. How many years away are we from a proper Premier League challenge?
Oof, that's a big question. I think this gets back to kind of what I was saying earlier about not seeing a future, I guess, like a real future under Unai. Because if Unai is our coach for the foreseeable future, I literally don't think that we are going to challenge under the Premier League ever under him, because he just seems so intent on setting up in his way, and it's clearly not progressive enough to really take us to that next step. But I think from a talent perspective, it depends on, I guess that's such a big question. There's so many variables, but going through, like looking at the academy players that are now first squad players, on the kids kind of coming up and through, I'm excited to kind of think about like our next wave of players, and I guess like a next generation. And I think we could potentially, with the right kind of like external additions, be challenging for a Premier League very consistently in like that's 5 to 6 years mark. But with the team that we have now, unless there is a managerial change, we're going to be hoping to avoid playing on Thursday nights rather than being kind of proactively hoping to be winning Champions League games, you know?
I don't even know what that means. To answer the question myself, I'm in the complete same camp as you. I just don't see us challenging for the Premier League under Emery. I wanted to give him enough time, but I'm leaning more of the come May, he should not be our manager. I just haven't seen enough. Like last year was a tough one because you are going through that transition, but we saw such gains in certain players, and now we're not. And I don't see us improving on the pitch. And, you know, when you look at like the results against Watford, where you're 2-0 up against the worst team in the league, and they're just absolutely awful, that's 2 extra points. You go yesterday to United and you think, okay, we should be really walking over to this. That's 4 points. So now you're looking at the City Liverpool level, right? In terms of like, we're still in their grasp. The season isn't even 8 weeks in, I don't think, and we're already out of first place. Like that's not happening. Yeah. And if you look at there are 2 or 3 areas that's already, you know, early in the season. Like, okay, you lose to Liverpool. Who's not going to lose to Liverpool? Spurs, we were up for it, but there were moments in that game we weren't. There's key identifiers for me that just kind of, I think to myself, we're close. We're not close enough yet. I feel like every year, every summer, we think, okay, we've signed this player in Torreira to be our defensive midfielder. Finally, we've plugged that hole. We're not plugging the hole with him. oh, great, we finally have a winger in Pepe. Okay, let's give him time. Oh, Reece Nelson's doing really well in Germany. He's going to come back and slot right in. Well, he's not. The only time that this summer, the only player we didn't buy was a defender, central defender, and we're like, okay, Holding's back. So,
and David Luiz though, I feel like that could prove a big addition once Holding's back.
It could, but with David Luiz, you buy a player who fucks up against Tottenham and you drop points. All that aside, I think we're close. I just don't think Emery's the guy to lead us. Yeah. Personally, what I would do is I would try something new. I would bring in Freddie as number one, and I would bring in Vieira, Henry, and some other players to be his like co-managers.
Just go full legacy?
Not even that. We're in a transition model, right? And I don't think that the reason I say that, B, is like if you look at the transition models for most clubs, it's pump as much cash in to catch up. We don't have that. So why not bring in Thierry Henry, who works directly with these forwards? Why not bring in Patrick Vieira, who works specifically with the midfielders? Why not bring in Tony Adams, who works specifically with the defenders? And you have Freddie, who's over all of them, like in the NFL, you have the puppet master with all the individual coaches. And you bring it all into one uniform at the end of training. And it's a successful way to do it. Right?
That would be pretty revolutionary.
Because they do it, but it's not revolutionary, though, because if you watch the documentary on City, All or Nothing, it's basically what they do. Guardiola has all these different teams where they split up, they do their thing, and then he brings them in together, and then he paints the picture for it all. And all the coaches come back with X, Y, and Z is doing great. He should be benched. He's not really following up. He's struggling with it. Let's sell his ass, blah, blah, blah. And so that's personally what I would like to see going forward is we hand over the reins and try something new. The other option there is you bring in Arteta as number one. He's not really a legacy player. Freddie is his number two. But I think that there needs to be more ownership. And I think the best way to do that and to keep that Arsenal aura is we bring in these legacy players and we say, hey, you were great at what you did. You've coached. You've got your badges. Go free.
I think that I totally understand kind of like the general reasoning behind that. I guess my thing is like if we're going to start thinking about who the next manager is going to be, there are so many talented, young, forward, progressive managers out there right now that are just like ready to make a transition to a bigger team. I really think we were kind of joking around about this when we were talking about this last week, but like I think having a full-fledged dive into like what's out there would be really useful because I think that there's so much value in potentially bringing in players who kind of understand the Arsenal way, I guess. Like, so like if you're bringing Thierry in to work with the attack and if you're bringing Vieira to work in with the midfield and you're bringing Tony Adams in to work with the defense, like that would be amazing. I think that you want to have I guess like I haven't seen enough of what Freddie is as a manager outside of in kind of like a more youth setup to be like he's the guy, unless he was the one that's setting up at Norwich. I mean against Forest, in which case like I don't want to be hyperbolic, but then we'd just be back instantaneously. But I feel like I don't know. That's like a big, and I think this gets into kind of like an interesting similarity to with how KSE has actually set up their previous teams or their other teams in the US. And I'm a big Colorado Avalanche fan. And what they've done basically with the Avs is kind of similar with what they're trying to do with us, except for it's like the Avs were in way, way worse position. Mm-hmm. And obviously like the business mechanics of having like a free agency set up really kind of don't operate in the same way as they do in football. But the general kind of thought behind like having a period where you're getting the right people in place and then delegating, like that's what KSE is known for. They are master delegators in like their sports sphere. And then they spend the money as the people who they've empowered to make those decisions see fit, and they will like fund it. And you look at the Avs, and we were absolutely abysmal. I mean, we're literally the worst team in the Western Conference 3 out of 4 years. And they brought in Joe Sakic, who is like arguably the biggest legend of all time, to be the general manager. And he has just been absolutely brilliant since, and we've built the team organically, and we're now the most exciting team in the NHL, arguably. I would say, inarguably.
You're a really big Avs fan, right?
I'm a pretty darn big Avs fan. I was really happy. What was that?
You going to the homeowner next week?
No.
Okay. I will be there. So bigger fan than you. Bigger fan than you.
I'll be at the first game that they're in Chicago.
At the end of the day, I think that we're, Fredo asked a quick question, and I think we've kind of answered this. Do you think Emery gets the full season, or is he out before 2020? I think he gets the full season. I think that, and we said it last week or 2 weeks ago, you have to give him – this conversation could completely 360 with all of the players back. If he told the board, I need Kieran Tierney, and Mike and I know this because we were in the meeting where it was said that was player number one the entire summer.
Yeah.
And Emery kept saying, I need to get a specific player, and then we work on everyone else. And if he's looking at the puzzle and he goes, okay, I know Holding's coming back. I know what he offers. Louise, Papa in that mix, Chambers in that mix.
Mustafi has looked great in his view.
It's not on wood. Just chill out, okay?
Knocking on wood there.
He's going to play in 2 days and likely give up 2 penalties. So I think, okay, I don't think he's the manager in 20. I think he gets the full season. Patrick Waugh out.
That was very on point for when that was a necessity.
To be fair to Patrick Waugh, he essentially went to them saying, what the fuck are you doing? But yeah, so I say Emery gets until the end of the season. I don't think they'll extend him. However, I would not be surprised if when come post-international break, full team is healthy, we go on a tear because we have Tierney, we have Bellerin, we have Holding, we have options.
So my biggest, I think that there's a lot of like credence to kind of that general framework and thinking about it. But I guess the biggest thing that I've been thinking about is like, if you need to do something eventually, you need to do that thing immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And like, are we delaying the inevitable by being like, okay, like, look, he's going to get these players back and things are going to get better, when we've seen that he has players and he's not maximizing their potential on the field because he's playing them out of position and we're setting up in stagnant and just like.
But last year when he had everyone available, we did go on the 20 match unbeaten run. That's what the only reason why I'm wondering.
Did you not feel like that was kind of a red herring though? Because like, I don't know, in retrospect, looking at that statistically, that was like one of the biggest 20 game stretches of outperforming XG in like recent Premier League history.
Yeah, but you're still doing it though.
100%. But that was then. Like that was like, and I don't know, you kind of talk about, you're like, when you think about making a managerial switch mid-season, like you're trying to bring a spark. You're trying to kind of realize a change from what's going on. And anytime you have a new manager, you're going to have like this inherent like excitement and like energy that comes with that, And I think that was, to an extent, a product of that. Too. I haven't even checked any of the scores that I have to take a look.
3-1 Bayern in the 50 seconds.
How did the Madrid game end?
2-2. And it was Mr. Serge Gnabry who just scored that goal. That's the only question I have is what's going to happen when he gets the ability to have an entire squad to tinker Taylor with.
Is he going to stop playing Xhaka at defensive mid, and is he going to start playing Torreira there? And is he going to stop isolating Pepe on the wing? And is he going to play midfielders that actually know how to play each other and complement one another?
The Pepe piece is going to be very intriguing when Bellerin is back because
that's going to be so fun. I'm so excited about that.
Teams are now looking at that going,
oh, goodness.
Boy. Yeah.
Well, especially, I mean, if you think about that overlap with the inside cut potential, like, oh my goodness, I've been so excited about that all summer, kind of coming back, and kind of now I'm feeling the exact same way on the other side with Tierney and Saka after having seen Saka getting in on that right foot and just kind of going to work like consistently. And I mean that I've been obviously kind of pushing that, like, we need those two back agenda because it's going to revolutionize the way that we're able to play. And I think that's like genuinely true. But I think you also have to look at, like, given the pieces that Unai has, he's made the decisions that he's made. You know, like the decisions that he's making make no sense. And we've seen that he's basically, 4-1 another for Gnabry?
I'm still. Oh wait, hold on a second. I might be a little bit behind.
My fault. I'm looking at the chat box.
Yeah, no, it's 4-1. He just scored again. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like my frustration with that way of thinking is like you're delaying the inevitable, hoping that what seems like it is inevitable, hoping that like new injections of kind of like quality pieces are going to change things. But he's had quality pieces in other areas and he's not utilized them in the way that they should be utilized. Yeah. So you have to start wondering, or I guess like the question that like I keep asking myself is like, what about them coming back is going to change him playing Xhaka? You know, like that theoretically, if he's playing Xhaka now at the base, he's going to continue to do it because he might have more cover with like better players around him, you know? But like, if he's doing that when it's like the worst case scenario to be doing that, what makes us think that him having even better players isn't just going to mean that he's going to put them into positions where they get frustrated and then start performing poorly, and then everybody turns against them, and then we just have a whole team of people who the fan base is angry with, and the players are playing football that are like not enjoying playing football, and that's just like a nightmare.
Totally. All right, dude. My computer is about to die. My knee is on fire. I need to go ice it. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
You too. Sorry for lots of rambles.
You know, if it's you're just making up for the time Mike would have interrupted and given us his stories and, you know, about the Gooner Roundup, which looked like it was a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to some of those stories.
You know, so yeah, we've got do we play Standard Liège on Thursday at home?
Hopefully we have another Forest type of match on our hands.
I think we will.
It can give us that false hope moving into Sunday. We can do it all over again next week.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone who joined us in the chat box. Ziegler, we did your user question. I'm not going to do all of them. My computer is about to run out of juice. And here's a little behind the curtains, right? Mike's job is to do user questions. I do the outline. B just shows up with that beautiful face, and we're good to go. Because Mike's not here, I only did a couple of the questions from Fredo and Ziegler, so I apologize if anyone's got missed, but maybe we can do them next week. All right, that being said, come on, you Gooners.